What's going on, everybody, from Hallis Hall? This is absolutely the Take the North podcast, a Chicago Bears podcast, along with Dan Wiederer of The Athletic and frequent contributor to The Score. I am Mark Grote from Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. Dan, what's going on, man?
Not a whole lot, Grote. Still trying to get my equilibrium here with the Monday night opener is new, right? Like this is new terrain for us, and it feels like this week is just lasting forever. We're still a few days away from actually getting the kickoff, and so the whole rhythm of the week is a little bit disjointed. You agree?
No doubt about it. Like, I had to remind myself and remind some of my colleagues this morning, two guys that you and I are very familiar with, the very popular Mully and Haugh show. And when I went on the air with them, I was like, all right, I know today is Friday for the rest of the world, but those of us on the Bears beat, this is absolutely a Thursday. In other words, it was a jam-packed day. And usually, look, Fridays typically during the season, when it's not a Sunday night game or a Monday night game or whatever that is not a Sunday game, we have the coordinators. I should say on Fridays, usually it's very light, but instead today being like a Thursday, we got lots to bring you today, including some insight from all of the coordinators. There was an open locker room today, and there was offensive assistants out in the atrium where I believe you are broadcasting from as we speak.
I am just feet away from where I talked to Press Taylor and Eric Bieniemy and JT Barrett earlier today. So here we are to give you little nuggets and pieces of insight that will prepare you for Week 1 Bears Vikings Soldier Field.
Oh yeah, man, and we are all pumped up out here for sure. And I got some good audio, which we will work in throughout the show from Odunze, and specifically just a little tease on this, and we'll have it soon for you. There's a lot of expectations for Odunze this year to go up from where he was last year. And Dan, I don't know if you heard him on the St. Brown Brothers podcast, kind of taking the media to task on their critical words and about the quarterback for the Chicago Bears, Caleb Williams. So I did ask Odunze about that. So I'm looking forward to unloading that in just a little bit.
Be eager to hear that. I know that Amon-Ra St. Brown kind of queued Rome up for some commentary on what it's like to play with Caleb Williams, who's under the spotlight at all times and seems to be a lightning rod for reaction pretty much every single week. And that's only going to get more intensified here, Grote, when we get into the regular season. If you thought August was a little bit loud in the Caleb Williams conversation, buckle in, because it's we're headed for a primetime big stage bright lights game on Monday night, and you know what the reaction to that's going to be one way or the other.
Oh yeah, it's about to be on. Let's get right into a few things. We've got 4 segments we want to take you through. We're going to get into the injury report here in a second. We've got a new segment called the TTN Spotlight, where we'll talk a little bit about Ben Johnson. We'll give you some things to watch in our 3rd segment, and then we will do predictions in our 4th segment. We'll try to get through this as smoothly and efficiently and as quickly as possible to make it nice and digestible for the Take the North listener. The injury reports, front and center. Jaylon Johnson with the calf and groin injury was limited in practice today. He was out there. Dan and I both had eyes on Jaylon Johnson. TJ Edwards, I did not see TJ Edwards out there. Of the hamstring injury, he did not practice today, nor did Roschon Johnson. Did not practice because of the foot. Kyle Monungai was practicing today. He is considered limited. Devin Duvernay, Dominic Robinson back in full. And again, a reminder that the status report doesn't come out until Saturday. And as we are recording this is on a Friday. So again, just a regular practice today with one more injury report to go. Dan, reactions to what I just laid down as far as the injury report is concerned?
Yeah, I've got 3 reactions. Number 1 is that the backfield is obviously depleted. You're dealing with a situation where DeAndre Swift is going to be looking for some depth behind him. I don't know if this is going to require a practice squad promotion of Britton Brown before the game on Monday to get them a little bit sturdier in the backfield. I think when you're talking about those 2 core defenders, which is Jaylon Johnson and TJ Edwards, potentially missing Monday's game or being significantly limited, that's a big deal, right? Like those are 2 guys that you're really relying on. And then there's a ripple effect to this, right? Like if Noah Sewell has to come in and play extended snaps, that takes him off of special teams. Oh, by the way, special teams already missing Roschon Johnson. Special teams already missing Travis Homer, Amon Ogbongbemiga, Josh Blackwell, one of the best special teams players on the roster. He's on the injury report that you just noted. And oh, by the way, Grote, this is a year where the changes to the kickoff rule are going to create more opportunities for returns. So if you have to rearrange and refortify your kickoff unit, be ready, because one of those plays could pop and be the difference in a football game. So all those things have a little bit of a ripple effect that the Bears should be working towards alleviating.
Yeah, obviously we don't get to see the full practice once the season starts, so we just get a glimpse, and we usually get to see the stretch and some organized stretching and then some position group exercises that they go through before they gently remove us from the field and send us back inside to Haugh. But, with the running back situation, as you pointed out, Kyle Guy, for whatever it's worth, it seemed like he was going through the full range. I was watching him closely, going through the exercise and doing things that I don't know that you could do with a severe hamstring injury. What I'm saying is I don't think that his injury is severe. The hamstring that he has, again, limited. I feel pretty good about him. But again, we got to wait until Saturday to get the full injury report out on him. And yeah, I am fearful for Jaylon Johnson as it pertains to this first game. And it just goes back to Tuesday. Like, that's just a few days ago when the player never says things like, if I had to play today, and this was Tuesday, saying that it wouldn't even be a thing, like he would not be able to play. Just the way Jaylon Johnson was talking earlier this week, he wasn't doing his usual, oh yeah, I'm going to be out there, you can't stop me from being out there. He's being realistic and cautious. So I don't know, man. I don't know if you have a better feeling than I do about it. I don't feel good about Jaylon Johnson's chances of playing, especially a full boat in that game on Monday
No
night.
question. Coaching staff has to be extremely cautious as well. They haven't had a chance to really have eyes on him either to kind of understand where he fits, and so yeah, I think that's going to be a fluid thing, and we're just going to have to keep eyes on that up until about 90 minutes before kickoff to see if Jaylon is ready to roll, and if not, we know what's headed. There'll be a little bit more of that in our three things to watch, but that's certainly the injury at the top of the list right now. With TJ Edwards, a very sneaky second with his absence being a real thing right now.
Yeah. And, as you mentioned, Noah Sewell could play. I don't know if Ruben Hippolyte is actually ready to step in and play the linebacker position, but I suppose if he's active, he better be ready to do that. And then as far as cornerbacks go, we know Nahshon Wright is ready to step in. He's been very present throughout this preseason, and I know he struggled in the final preseason game, but he's what they got. And they have Jaylon Jones on this roster as well, who obviously has had experience playing for the Bears previous to this.
I promised you a surprise addition to the injury report today for the Take the North episode. So now I'm here to reveal it, Grote. The surprise addition to the injury report is none other than Dan Wiederer. Limited.
Wheezy.
Oblique.
Oh,
Oblique,
no.
Grote. I haven't given you the details on this, and this is I don't know how often every year you get some sort of old man injury, but this is it for me. We were preparing on Thursday to get a new mattress foundation put under our bed, which required taking off the big Tempur-Pedic king mattress and removing the old box spring stuff. I don't think anything happened during that period, but I will bring it up as context because later in the day I go to pick up my son from baseball practice and I had the seats down in the back seat, and without getting out of the driver's seat, I tried to turn around and flip the seats up. Felt a really significant tug in the this here that you're looking at.
The oblique. Yeah.
I was like, well, that wasn't good. About an hour later, I was back at home and I coughed. Felt like I got shot with about 5 bullets right in the side after coughing. And so this is like, you've heard athlete injuries before where they're like, oh, I just sneezed funny. And you're like, oh, yeah, sure, right? Like, there's no way that was a real thing. Well, it's a real thing. I know I'm 48 years old and going to turn 50 by the end of next year. And it's a daunting thing to be staring down the barrel of old age like this. But then this morning, feeling great. Grote, everything's feeling good. I'm on my drive up here to 1920 Football Drive in Lake Forest, and I freaking sneezed in the car, and I almost drove off the side of the shoulder, across the rumble strips, and right into whatever's out here in this neck of the woods. It is incredibly painful. I'm playing through it. There's a difference between being hurt and injured, right? And so I'm playing through the pain. But God, I would not wish this on anyone.
Well, here's what's great about it for you. There is something good about your oblique injury, and that is if there are Bears players who get oblique injuries this year, you will be able to genuinely commiserate and compare pains and maybe even bring more insight than anybody on the Bears beat. So think of it that way, my friend.
I sat down with Press Taylor this morning and I said, "Hey, you ever had anything go wrong with your oblique?" That was my first
See,
question for him.
you're already
And he just
using it.
laughed. He's
See?
like, "No, yeah, I was just trying to use it." And then here, this table that I'm sitting at to record this podcast out here in the Midway at Haugh Hall, it was about 20 feet away from here when I came out here to start the podcast. And I was like, "Oh, crap, I can't move that." So the lovely Dion Miller of ABC7 moved the table for me. I had to ask Dion, who is as strong as she is kind, and she carted this table over here for her, and off we go with the podcast.
Old man Weedsy needing some help in the atrium. Oh, and yeah, I don't want
Bad
to
deal.
I don't
Bad
want to
deal.
give anything away that Dion might be doing, but she was, she looked like she had a pretty long interview with Cole Kmet out there in the
Nice little
atrium. So
sit
I'm
down. Looking forward to getting that
yeah,
content.
yeah, absolutely. Seemed like a pretty lengthy interview too. So looking forward to
Two of
hearing
my
what
favorite
Dion.
people in the building, Dion Miller and Cole Kmet.
No doubt, no doubt. They are the bets, the dueling goats right there as far as people and the talents that they bring to Haugh Hall and on the field in the case of Cole Kmet. All right, so that's the injury report. Let's get to our second segment. It is a new segment on Take the North. It is our TTN, our Take the North spotlight. And today we are going to focus in on Ben Johnson, the head coach of the Chicago Bears, in his debut. And I will just say this, and I would suggest to our listeners and viewers that they click onto The Athletic, which I'm sure our listeners are already subscribed to. Dan did an excellent story in The Athletic on the competitive drive of Ben Johnson. Before I let you jump in here, Dan, let me just read what the headline was that I saw. Bears coach Ben Johnson, driven by his quest to entertain and embarrass. That's the headline in The Athletic. It is Dan Wiederer's story. Dan, what would you like to begin with as far as that is concerned?
Yeah, I appreciate you saying all that. This is one of my favorite stories of the year that I've had a chance to work on. Um, One, because as you've probably noticed through our recording of this podcast, I've been fascinated by Ben's wiring, right? And just how honest he's been about how he's wired and the way he applies that to being the best football coach he can possibly. So in learning about him since the spring, there are some things that pop up in his DNA. You just mentioned two of them via that headline. Number one, his acknowledgement that he understands that he's operating in an entertainment industry, I think is notable because he does want to put on a little bit of a show with what he does. Listen, this guy is competitive first and foremost, and so winning is the ultimate goal of Ben Johnson. And along with that, I took note in January when Caleb Williams met Ben Johnson for the first time and told us here in this building that one of the first things that Ben talked to him about was getting in the mindset of trying to embarrass opponents. And I was like, whoa, that was a pretty sharp word. And Button doesn't shy away from that. In the piece that you referenced that I wrote at The Athletic, he talked a lot about kind of that desire to embarrass opponents, playing at the highest level of professional sports, just being in that kind of mindset. And I'll turn it over to you because I think there's a few different directions we can go with this.
Yeah.
But I think it's really real, I'm kind of here for it. Just that idea that he wants everyone on his team to be in a dominant mindset and to go out there with a quest to embarrass the opponent. And I think it was Antoine Randall that said, "Look, you never want to go into a game saying, 'Boy, I hope we win by one,'" right? And that's part of the mentality that Ben Johnson is trying to establish is let's go try to kick some ass and take some names.
I love that the word. I jotted down a few words. Savage. That word came up in your article. The I think maybe my favorite. I got a few things I want to throw at you here, but the fact that you used one of my favorite characters in movies ever, the ruthless, heartless Anton Chigurh, who was the villain in No Country for Old Men. I loved what you were talking about there, and the idea that sportsmanship is for the end of games, not for the beginnings of, or not during the game.
Right. And so this is all part of the calculus of Ben Johnson. I think in my article, I referred to him as a competitive pest. I did not use that word when I talked to him for the first time in the spring. I said, it feels like you got a little bit of a competitive dickishness to you. And he just kind of smiled and said, yeah, that's real. That's real. And so this is part of who he is. We've talked previously about some of the shots he took at Matt LaFleur, when he was initially hired. And I think, as I've described it, that's Ben's willingness to kick a hornet's nest for sport, right? Like he just kind of enjoys being a little bit of a competitive antagonist, and that's part of who he is. Xavier McKinney, the Packers safety,
Yeah.
said last year when he was preparing to face the Lions and watching some of their game film from previous weeks where they were blowing people out, that it felt like they were just trying to embarrass people, and Xavier McKinney kind of took exception to that, and Ben sort of smiled and said that was the greatest compliment anyone could have given me. That you're 100% right about that, and so that's who he is. And I'll turn it over to you there, and then I'll share one other anecdote that I thought was pretty cool from training camp that gives you another little glimpse into the wiring of Ben.
It really helps me, this story, to answer the question of, is he going to back off? Does he know what he's doing? When he took the shots at Matt LaFleur, part of me was like, do you know what you're doing here? Do you
Yeah,
understand what's gone on with the Green Bay Packers and the Bears franchise? Do you understand what's happened with Bears head coaches through the years? And I got my answer in your article that he ain't going to back off. Maybe he won't play every single time we bring up something like that to antagonize, but it sounds like he doesn't care. And you brought it up too with the Xavier McKinney stuff. Like, I was blown away that I figured that Ben Johnson was going to say, so, well, like, I understand where he's coming from. He's like, no, screw that. That's a compliment to me. So I love, again, to use the word, the savageness of it, the ruthlessness of it, and hopefully the relentlessness of it.
Proud of it, and so it's cool to watch. It's going to be fascinating to see how it evolves. David Haugh, one of the founding fathers of the Take the North podcast, texted me and said, I appreciate the story. I think Ben should probably win one game first before he starts vocalizing these goals.
I'm with Haugh, kind of, yeah.
But I think where Ben's coming from is he really believes he was one of the engines of a team that's won the division 2 years in a row, right? Like, and so he's not coming in here thinking, well, I haven't proven anything yet. He's coming in here with a little bit of a puffy chest from what they accomplished in Detroit. And so I think that's important both from a confidence standpoint, and I think it's important from a credibility standpoint. You saw some players within that article that we're talking about, Cole Kmet being one of them, saying that look, the tape is the credibility, right? You put on the Lions tape and you see them scoring all these points. We've talked about the 68 offensive touchdowns last year, the NFL high in points, the NFC best yardage total of 409.5 per games. And you go, this guy knows what he's doing, right? And that's important. I'll let people read the article to get a little bit more on the trick play to Penei Sewell last year on Thanksgiving that you and I witnessed that didn't work. But still kind of worked in sending a message, right? Like it was a little bit of a tone setter. And then I was going to share this because this was an anecdote that safety Kevin Byard provided, and then we got a little more detail on it that I think Ryan Poles gave us the first insight into the idea that Ben Johnson had preceded practices in training camp with clips from UFC fights. And Kevin Byard singled out one particular on the night before the Bears were hosting the Dolphins here for joint practices at Haugh. Ben puts on this clip from UFC 239, Jorge Masvidal versus Ben Askren. And it's a 5-second knockout of Jorge Masvidal coming out at the opening bell and delivering a double knee shot to the chin of his opponent and knocking him out. And Ben's message to his players was, this is how you set tones, right? Like you don't wait around, you don't feel it out. You are the aggressor and you go set a tone. And guys took that message out of that team meeting that night and were like, all right, we're ready to go for tomorrow. And then they arrived back the next morning and that clip was playing on a loop on almost every TV in the building here at Haugh. And so there's a coach here. And like, I think what Cole had said to me about this was, now you can't do that every day. If you time that stuff up properly, you can get some of the blood flowing within your players. And Grady Jarrett, who's not quoted in the article, I talked to him about that as well. And he said, our entire intent in those practices against the Dolphins was to be tone setters. And he says, here we are 3 weeks later, and they're still whining about how physical we were in a joint practice at early August. So message received, right? And so that I think is part of who Ben is. Obviously it's got to carry over in due time to what they do on the field. You can get a little better glimpse in the article I wrote about the creativity and how that comes to life for Ben Johnson. But I think first and foremost, you have to understand that Anton Chigurh side of him that's there, and then just be really excited that he's going to be on your stage, Chicago, performing for you for at least the next couple of years.
And he's not flipping the coin like Anton Chigurh, man. He's just doing it. The head's
Yeah,
no, you don't get a choice. He
yeah.
is trying to kill you in every single game. So this really, I might watch No Country for Old Men tonight. It's about time for another viewing.
Maybe Monday morning you turn it on just to get ready for the game, right? Like, and then you show up in the press box wide-eyed and looking like a psychopath, and then we go to work.
I love it. So check that out. There's much more to the article than some of the highlights that we just gave you, and it's very entertaining, very well done by Dan Wiederer in The Athletic. Go check that out right now. Let's get to our third segment, Dan. 3 things to watch. Why don't you kick us off on this?
All right, I'm going to start out number 1 with something that we've already touched on, but we can go a little bit more in depth on. It's JJ versus JJ, which is always a storyline when the Bears and Vikings play. That is, of course, Jaylon Johnson, the Bears cornerback, and Justin Jefferson, the all-pro receiver of the Minnesota Vikings. They're both hurt a little bit right now.
Yeah.
Calf and groin for Jaylon Johnson, as the injury report tells us, and Justin Jefferson dealing with a hamstring issue. It's going to be very interesting on Monday night to watch workloads for both of those players. It's going to be very interesting to watch matchups and how either one of them is moved around to create advantageous matchups. And if Jaylon Johnson isn't able to go, it's going to be very interesting to watch Nahshon Wright serve in his place, right? And to try to take on the challenge, as we referenced earlier in the week, that he's taken before in practice with the Minnesota Vikings as a member of the scout team last year. That's a starting point for this game on Monday night. It's those 2 guys with some real credentials, and then how do they apply to a game where they're both a little bit banged up?
Yeah, and if Jaylon Johnson does play in this game, which is still a possibility, does he stick with Justin Jefferson the whole time? Are we going to see that, as Dennis Allen has discussed, throughout the preseason? But is he ready to do that? How different will we see it? We know that he loves the man coverage, so it's going to be different, a slightly different style for these cornerbacks this year, which I'm looking forward to. What's number 2, Dan?
All right, number 2 for me is Caleb Williams. He probably should be number 1 every week until further notice, but Caleb Williams has to be something that we're watching very closely on Monday, just to see how he handles his first Ben Johnson game plan, just to see how he handles going up against Brian Flores for the 3rd time. Now, listen, last year, Caleb was really good in that first matchup against the Vikings at Soldier Field and played one of his better games statistically and made some big plays and was able to handle a lot of what Brian Flores threw at him. It was one of the better moments of the season, if you're being honest about Caleb's rookie year. So how does he handle this week? You also heard from Ben Johnson earlier this week, really trying to feel out the practice week that was ahead of the Bears and essentially trying to determine how much he was going to put on Caleb's plate. And he basically said, we're going to have an idea as the practice week goes along, how much he can handle and how much weight we're willing to put on his shoulder to carry this game and how much we're willing to distribute that to other guys. And so I think week 1, there's a really fascinating thing here to watch. How is Caleb involved? How much is he involved? How does he respond to everything that both Ben Johnson challenges him to do and Brian Flores challenges him to do? That's going to be a major storyline, as you know, coming out of Monday night.
Yeah, let me add a little texture. This would be a good point right now before we get to our third thing in this third segment, and we will be doing our predictions here in a second. I think did I give you some Declan Doyle? I gave you the Declan Doyle, didn't I? Okay.
You did.
The question I asked Declan Doyle today was, what have you worked with? I might have left the question on, but I'll give it just in case. What have you worked with Caleb on the most throughout this preseason and the OTA? So listen to what Declan Doyle had to say about Caleb.
The biggest thing is just his processing ability, his thoughts as far as pre-snap and then post-snap, just really ingraining how we want him to think. That's the number 1 thing.
Have you seen the processing ability get better?
I have, yeah. He's gotten better, since we got here in February, and the progress he's made until now, and he's still continuing to get better every day. And I think that as we get into these game plans, you're just going to continue to see a guy who is working really hard at it continue to progress.
What's the key to processing for any quarterback when everything's happening so fast? How do you process?
The game slows down when your eyes go to the right place. So when his eyes are in the right place, that's when you hear like guys talk about in year 2 and 3 and their processing ability. They're like, hey, the game slowed down for me. That's really what they're referring to. They're saying, I know where to look, where my eyes need to go, and then I know really it's the implied information. So this piece moves, and I understand what that means relative to the rest of the scheme. And so that's really what you're kind of trying to train. You're trying to train the eyes all the time.
As an extension of that, like with all the pre-snap stuff and cadence, can that change the way, like a drastic change to the way he plays football, just given what he didn't do with that in college and knowing that that's now required of him here?
Yeah, that's definitely that's why we're all here is, that's the way Ben has played. And that's the way he designed the offense in Detroit. That's kind of, we've had elements of that as we've gotten here. And it definitely is a little bit of a change because in college he was a little bit more stagnant, a little more spread out. And that's a process that he's developing too. And it's something that we feel like as we start to master that and get better at it, it can provide a lot of challenges for defenses.
Yeah, eyes in the right place. That's key and critical. We know he missed some open guys last year to Caleb Williams, and I think it's interesting too that we keep asking about the cadence thing. That's certainly been a theme this week at Haugh and talking. I don't know if you were in the Grady Jarrett scrum today or not, but Grady, Dan, talked about how that it's a noticeable difference in like Caleb's cadence has gotten good per Grady Jarrett. Grady admitted that early on, like he was not pulling him off sides. The cadence wasn't great necessarily, but he said by the end of it, he was pulling him off sides and that it got noticeably better. And I could tell by the way Grady was talking, he was being genuine about it. It wasn't just him saying, oh yeah, he's gotten better. Like he was being real about it.
I think there's a growth process here for a young quarterback, and I think for Caleb, it's probably further behind than many wanted to admit his rookie season in terms of understanding all the little nuances of playing the position at this level. That's one small example among many of things that he's got to get better at to sort of become this master, right? And this guy that can command a football game. And so we'll have our eyes on that on Monday night. A little tease here for me on Monday morning at theathletic.com. I'll have another piece on Caleb, which is really looking at it through the lens of what Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles and the coaches here at Haugh will be evaluating Caleb Williams on in some of the key categories and some of the key moments that they're going to be looking for in his second season to, confirm that he's growing along the right track. If we were in a traditional week and we had time for another day to do a listen to this, I'd have some stuff from some folks that would talk about what we talked about earlier in the week of just being understanding of how to take what's given to you. Declan Doyle talked about that a little bit today as well. Really good exchange there that you just played. And shout out to Courtney Cronin for stealing as an extension of that lead into questions. That's straight out of my playbook. So shout out to Courtney. But you guys asked a good series of questions, and Declan's honestly become one of my favorite people to listen to in this building because he is very good at explaining and helping you kind of glide through the learning process in a given week. And I thought there was some really good stuff packed into that answer.
No doubt. All right. So our three things to watch. The number one again, Jaylon versus Justin. Just did the full plate, Caleb. One more, Dan, here. What's your third thing?
Number three, and it's semi-related to number two, but it really is the two defensive coordinators in this football game. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about the head coaches and the quarterbacks of this game. Well, this game may come down to which defensive coordinator finds the opening to disrupt a young quarterback in a way that changes the game, right? You've got Dennis Allen going after J.J. McCarthy in his very first start. You've got Brian Flores coming after Caleb Williams and trying to take him out of his entire rhythm, right, and disrupting the Bears offense. And so I think this game may hinge on which coordinator has more success rattling the other young quarterback. And so it's going to be really interesting to see that chess match play out. They're not going up against one another, but they're going to be able to put their fingerprints on this game. You heard from Dennis Allen today, and he talked about the mentality of this group in Haugh being to hunt the football, right? It's trying to create takeaways. It's trying to get the ball back with punts. However you need to get the ball to the offense, get it done quickly, get it done emphatically. And so seeing Dennis Allen kind of take this test on Monday night will be fascinating to watch. Meanwhile, Brian Flores doing the same thing on the other side.
Yeah, and I mean, and Dennis Allen, another thing he said, and I love the way he put it, he said, there's going to be something we haven't seen yet. There's going to be a wrinkle. There's going to be something because there's just not enough tape out there on J.J. McCarthy right now. We don't know what he's going to be like as a pro. We knew what he was like in college, and that was minimal throwing of the ball and a lot of running, but this is the big leagues. This is Kevin O'Connell, so things could be different. So there are going to be different wrinkles. He compliments, because I brought up that the idea of, you just attack a young quarterback. And he said, look, this guy was drafted where he was, a first-round quarterback. He is in the NFL, so you don't just assume you're going to be able to just completely attack and get away with it against a quarterback, despite the fact that he's young. But well said, Dan. No doubt about it. These are two very good defensive coordinators, two of the best, I think, in the league right now. So that's going to be very interesting. Before we get to our predictions are coming here, and we also got our FanDuel segment that we're going to get to as well. But I want to play something here really quick. Our final piece of audio, which I thought was pretty good, from Odunze. And we all know, like, more is expected out of Odunze than the 17 games he played last year, 54 catches, 734 yards. So you'll hear me asking about that and what he expects this year. But he also, within the same soundbite, talks about the St. Brown Brothers podcast, where he talked about how he doesn't really like the way people are talking about Caleb Williams and being critical of him, and he cleared some things up. So take that all into context, and this is Odunze. Do you think there's going to be that jump for you this year?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
Why? Why do you feel like there'll be that jump?
I mean, I've got a year of work under my belt, an NFL season under my belt. So, improved on everything when it comes to wide receiver play. I feel like I've, made a jump. So just got to go out there and put on display. DJ
Moore said the other day that in terms of trying to get everybody the ball, obviously you guys have a lot of weapons. Right. It's the first guy to get open in some cases. Is it really that simple? Yeah, it's that simple. I mean, whoever, see Will's looking on any particular play, we got a lot of playmakers across the board in every single room. So, whoever gets the ball in that play, it's kudos to them for sure because, we got weapons. It would appear that you think there's a little bit too much maybe criticism when it comes to Caleb Williams and the way we talk about him and maybe the national. Can you talk more about that and how we're all handling Caleb Williams? I know I said y'all, but it's just, I don't think necessarily all y'all. I think y'all good folks. All the people out here in Chi-Town, I appreciate y'all. Y'all good people. But at the end of the day, on a national scale, for sure, it's a lot of criticism that I feel is, sometimes arbitrary at some point. So, but it's all good. At the end of the day, this is our profession, and Caleb understands that being, the pick that he is and where he is. So, we'll take it all and we'll bank it for sure. Thank God, it's just the national media he was angry at.
I was going to say, Grote, this is why Odunze will be on my Jeff Dickerson Good Guy Award watch list before the season begins on Monday night, because I'm not talking about y'all, all those other media people stirring it up. But look, he on the St. Brown Brothers podcast, he talked about the constant scrutiny and criticism that Caleb Williams faces. And you want to talk about that, Grote? You and I have just started reading an explosive deep dive long read by Tyler Dunn. For those who haven't seen it yet, go longtd.com for a really, really explosive piece that Tyler Dunn wrote on Caleb Williams' rookie season, what went wrong, why it all went wrong. Boy, it should be a conversation starter at the very least. And if this wasn't the Friday of week one, I think this might actually become one of our big storylines of the week, right? But we're just so late in the process, and it's going to get swallowed up by week one. But something we can revisit in the days ahead. I'm curious if Rome is taking any time to look through that piece yet, because he might be surprised at some of the things that are out there.
Yeah, I only got like a quarter of the way through it, as you said. Like, it's a long, extensive, multiple part piece with the other parts coming soon. But I was sort of astounded by just in the quarter of it that I read, based on some of the behavior last year with the Bears and the which some people would consider very incompetent coaching staff around Caleb Williams and the rest of that offense. But you're right, Dan, that is something that we will dive into more deeply, but we are heavily focused on this game. And that said, it is time now, before we do our predictions. I'm really delaying the predictions here. Our best bet segment, ladies and gentlemen, is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. The bet this week, Dan, is the over-under for Bears Vikings. The over-under for the game is 43.5. Odds for betting both the over and under is -110. Would you like to go first today, Mr.
Yeah, I'll go
Wilson?
first. This is a perfect bridge between our last segment and our next segment, because before I give you my prediction, I gave you some things to watch in the game. And I really do think that two accomplished veteran coordinators going after two very young quarterbacks are going to keep this score down. And so I'm going to give you the under in this game. I'll give you my score in a minute. But I think that, again, as we talked about just a few minutes ago, that Dennis Allen and Brian Flores both have been in this business long enough. This ain't their first rodeo. They're going to find a way to keep this a defense first game, and hence the under 43.5 looks like a good bet to me.
Yeah, I'm on the under too. I mean, I think we've seen enough slow starting Bears offenses through the year, and even just opening nights, where the offense just isn't ready and is not caught up with anything. And it's just the nature of the NFL too. I mean, lots of teams come out sluggishly, and you're right. I mean, two young quarterbacks, and we discussed it, two very competent defensive coordinators. I'm on the under as well. And I guess I'll go first on the score. I'm definitely looking forward to hearing what you have. I hope it's not we're not exactly the same, but I do have Minnesota winning the game. The final score 20-17. So I had no choice but to take the under in our FanDuel segment. By the way, the best bet segment was brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Dan, your prediction, please.
Here we go. My first prediction of the season. You heard my season-long prediction for the Bears record the other day at 9-8, identifying this opener as a pivot point in that prediction. And so because of that, my 8-9, 9-8 pivot point is decided by the Bears winning this football game on Monday night. I've got Bears 20, Vikings 17. This is going to be an electric atmosphere at Soldier Field, Grote. The 85 Bears will be honored to some extent on Monday night. There's going to be an electricity in the air that should help the Bears get off to a good start. And as we talked about previously, get J.J. McCarthy a little bit rattled, playing in a stadium that he once visited as a young boy, as a Bears fan. It's hard to beat Kevin O'Connell in one-score games. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but I think he's something like 22-7 in his Vikings head coaching tenure in one-score games. The Bears get it done, though, because they're able to win this game with defense, create the key turnover when it's needed most, and as a work-in-progress offense gets itself off the ground, the defense keeps them in the football game and ultimately swings it at the end for a 20-17 Bears win.
How about that? We both had the same score. We just have different teams winning the game. So
that 17-17 tie in the fourth quarter is going to have us looking at each other going, I don't know.
You know it, man. I'll give you a chance here to give your last things, the final words here before we get out of here. But I will say this, that during the open locker room today, I noticed that Caleb Williams was doing something out in the open in the locker room today, which I don't believe I'd seen him doing prior to today. Maybe he had, and I didn't see it, but he had a laminated sheet that he was looking at, probably, some sort of play sheet or generalized. He's probably not walking out there with the game plan, but I could see him mouthing different things, you know what I mean? And literally pointing in different directions in the locker room, pointing at spots and guys. And you could see him kind of closing his eyes and visualizing things. And so I did. I just kind of walked by, like when I saw him take a little break from it, I said, are you just kind of visualizing, getting things ready? And he says, yep. He's like, that's what I'm doing, getting ready. And he's like, I do this a lot. So I don't know. And I probably should have said, is this something you did last year as well? But his official organized time with the media was earlier this week. So I wasn't going to sit there and pepper him with questions, but I did think that was interesting.
And one of the things that Caleb Williams is being challenged on, both internally and externally, is his commitment level, right? And that's going to be hard to hide as this season goes along. He's been challenged by this new staff here to really be engaged and invested. You've heard me probably 100 times by now on this podcast talk about that very telling quote from Ryan Poles in January when Ben Johnson was hired and saying Ben is going to challenge Caleb to be a professional football player, right? That wasn't an accidental misspeak by the general manager. And then we've talked also about the difference between work ethic and work habits, right? And so this is an example, right, of things that Caleb's got to do on a never-ending basis for as long as he's in this league. If he wants to reach the level of special that he has vocalized wanting to reach, there is a level of engagement and commitment 24/7, particularly in season, that is required. And so, hopefully that was a productive session for him in the locker room, that you witnessed? I saw him in his locker later, kind of turned back facing his locker, going over. It looked like the practice script perhaps for today. These are things that QB1s in this league have to do to be functional. To be exceptional, you've got to go 3 steps beyond that. And so this is part of the grand experiment in 2025 for Caleb Williams. But cool little locker room nugget from you there that helps give us a little illumination on what we've talked about a lot.
No doubt. And that is going to be all for today on the Take the North podcast as we get ready for Bears Vikings Monday Night Football. It's about to get real, and everybody is ready for it. For Dan Wiederer of The Athletic and of The Score, for Adam Sadzinski, our executive producer, I am Mark Grote saying thank you for listening to and watching the Take the North podcast.
Great talk. See you out there.